Hi everyone, it's Janelle Maloney, author and historian, and the Hottie Historian if you've been watching on social media. And I wanted to say hello and introduce my friend Larry because we're about to take a road trip through the Oregon and Overland California trails in eastern Wyoming, and we want you to come alongside of us. Larry, it's important that we know who you are guiding us on this trip.
I'm a longtime rancher, and I'm from a ranch family that's been on the Oregon Trail for over 100 years. And it's an interest of mine, so we're going to go look things over.
Yeah, enjoy the video. Hey, it's Janelle Maloney, and I'm coming to you from about Rolling Hills, or just over yonder from Glen Rock, Wyoming. And behind me is this wonderfully beautiful and lush and green ravine. And it's kind of important when we're talking about the history of immigrants coming through Wyoming in 1864, because I believe that this ravine through Monkey Mountain is where Sarah Larimer and her son Frank came back down from up north towards the Pine Gulch Ravine, up towards Powder River, and they came down this ravine to remain concealed as they were escaping captivity from Northern Plains Indians. For those who don't know, Sarah Larimer was kidnapped on July 12th with her son Frank and with Fanny Kelly and Mary Hurley Kelly, just not too far from here at Little Box Elder Creek by Northern Plains Indians during the Platte River raids. And that has since been called the Kelly Larimer Massacre. I choose not to use that word. I don't think it applies correctly. I feel more comfortable with the Kelly Larimer incident. That's just where I stand. So on that night, the women and children were taken due north, or sort of northeast, up the Powder River Basin to become slaves for the Sioux Nations up there. And unfortunately, that is what happened with Fanny Kelly. She was a slave amongst many tribes or many tribal bands for at least 5 months. But on the second night out, Sarah Larimer said, "That's it. We are not going further." And her son snuck out of their camp, and they were unable to bring Fanny Kelly with them because it was just too dangerous. Although Fanny later remarks that that was a deep, deep betrayal. So I'm sure they had to work on some forgiveness at that point. But Sarah and her son Frank hiked over about a little ways to my right, an accordion set of hills that fold, and she stayed in the shadows. She traveled at night. They traveled by moonlight. She says basically they walked uphill both ways in the snow. She walked barefoot on cactus and got prickly pears in her feet, and it wasn't comfortable. She says that they had to, in order to eat, they found a toad by a little pond, or a mud hole basically, and her son Frank took a stick and did his very best to prepare dinner with a stick, no fire that would reveal where they were. And so they did their best with that local cuisine. But as they were coming down Monkey Mountain in this ravine, Sarah Larimer remarks on incredible sights inside. She says that the ravine features these little rooms or corridors. Some of them look like a music hall or a cathedral. Some of them have beautifully painted walls. And so when you read her account, you can actually use Google Maps, truly, Google Earth, and you can zoom in and you can see those little corridors as you move through this ravine that comes down through rolling hills. And ultimately, as we come out of the ravine, we would be able to see downhill towards where thousands of immigrants who had just been through the Platte River raids and were gathering for safety across the North Platte River from Deer Creek Garrison. They'd be right down there, and Sarah Larimer remarks that she was a little uncertain, hesitating to approach. She maybe thought, oh, there's more Indians there. And yes, there were. There were the wives and children of some of the soldiers who married Indians, and they were camped around. So she was hesitant to approach until she heard someone speaking a Germanic language, and she said, oh, those are our people. And so her and Frank did come through later. They actually end up getting to camp on July 17. And I'm going to read about that. On hearing the voices of those who were camped nearby, Sarah Larimer says that it was a most joyful and welcome sound, one in which there was no mistake, our own language spoken by some boys who passed driving cattle. And we arose, they were in hiding, and soon saw a man approaching with 2 horses and called to him. And I endeavored to explain to him why I thus unceremoniously addressed him. But he interrupted me and he said, oh yes, I've already heard of the Indian outbreak and that you were carried away, but no one ever dreamed of your coming back. He explains that Sarah Larimer's husband is across the river with the soldiers at Deer Creek Garrison, and he is trying his very best to learn anything about how he can better help form a rescue party or get medical care or get soldiers to be recruited to do something to help him find his wife and his son. Well, I'm sure it was quite a surprise to him to learn that his lady was finally back. So I've just come down from approximately the ravine that Sarah Larimer would have taken through Monkey Mountain down to the banks of the North Platte River, where thousands of immigrants would be camped in July of 1864 after the Platte River raids, hoping to hear anything good from the soldiers at the Deer Creek Garrison just on the other side of the river. Hoping to hear, we found your horses, or we found the culprit, or we're gonna help, or some kind of an answer to what do we do now? Some of the immigrants lost every horse they had. Some of them lost lives in their families, and they have no one else to ask for help, you know, other than the military that are stationed here. The 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry was stationed here at Glen Rock, as it is now. Well, I wanted to read a selection from Sarah Rousseau's diary. She's my 3rd great-grandmother who was on the trail in 1864 on the north side of the North Platte River. And on July 17, she remarks on seeing and hearing about Sarah Larimer coming in, and no one really believed that any of these ladies would suddenly appear within a matter of a few days after being kidnapped. So it was quite shocking to learn of that. She writes from July 17 that we went on until we came to a soldier station, and there we heard that one of the captured women had made her escape from the Indians and had just arrived there. She caught one of their ponies and had rode 2 days and nights without anything to eat. We don't know how reliable that statement is, as we did not see the woman. She definitely didn't catch a pony. That would have been some kind of a detail that maybe came through, playing the telephone game and stories being passed along from mouth to mouth to mouth. And her diary or her recollections, Sarah Larimer's, do not include anything of the sort of getting a pony to help her escape. It was all on foot. So I'm going to switch over to reading from Immigrant Tales of the Platte River Raids, where we see how Sarah Larimer was received when she got here on July 17. And we're looking at an account from Martha Rowe, who is coming from Iowa. She's newlywed. And in her diary, she writes, on July 17, just after supper, in came one of the women and the children that was captured by the Indians. She came a long ways and were tired and faint. Sarah Larimer really appreciated being taken in by Martha Rowe and her family and friends, And she does mention that in her recollection, or her memoir that she publishes in 1870. In fact, she says that when they arrived at the place where the women were, and they were introduced and cordially welcomed, and she said, "Never before was I so glad to see ladies. They were, of course, all strangers to me, but notwithstanding, they seemed as sisters." So I find that to be a wonderful little connection between Sarah Larimer and Martha Rowe while they're here on the north side of the North Platte River, just across from Deer Creek Garrison. It wasn't too long that Sarah Larimer was able to get across and learn the fate of what happened to everyone else in her wagon train. And eventually, her and her husband headed south back to Fort Laramie for a little medical attention and TLC before they settled for a while in Wyoming, and then they went on to pursue other adventures in other states. So that kind of concludes the Sarah Larimer tale from this point. To stay concealed as they were escaping Cape Sally Larimer, I say, incident that was captured by the Indians. No! What was I saying?